Hey friends, I'm Megan, so glad you're here. We've got a great episode today. Let's get started.
She grew up in a home where the presence of her father was both a source of comfort and complexity. Their relationship was marked by a mixture of deep affection and unresolved tensions that shaped much of her emotional landscape. From an early age, she learned to navigate the nuances of his personality, his strengths, his weaknesses, and the ways in which his influence permeated her life. He was a man of strong opinions and expectations, whose love, though sincere, sometimes came wrapped in criticism and unspoken demands. This dynamic created a backdrop against which she developed her sense of self, her fears, and her desires. The relationship with her father was a cornerstone of her identity, influencing how she viewed love, trust, and intimacy. When she entered a romantic relationship, these early experiences inevitably colored her perceptions and interactions. She found herself drawn to a partner who, in many ways, mirrored her father's traits, his mannerisms, his ways of expressing affection, and even his imperfections. This familiarity brought a strange comfort but also an undercurrent of tension that she struggled to understand. The lines between past and present blurred, as memories of her father's presence intertwined with her feelings for her boyfriend. The emotional patterns she had internalized resurfaced in unexpected ways, influencing how she connected and communicated in intimate moments. This overlap created a complex emotional terrain, where love and past wounds coexisted uneasily. The relationship with her boyfriend was vibrant and full of promise, marked by moments of joy, laughter, and discovery. Yet, beneath the surface, there were unspoken currents shaped by her history and her fears. She grappled with the desire to break free from the shadows of her past while simultaneously seeking familiarity and security. This tension manifested in subtle ways, influencing how she expressed herself and how she related to her partner. The emotional resonance of her childhood experiences with her father played out in the dynamics of their relationship, creating moments of connection and conflict. She found herself walking a delicate line between embracing love and confronting unresolved feelings that lingered beneath the surface. Her relationship with her father was a constant presence in her mind, shaping her expectations and insecurities. She often reflected on the ways his behavior had influenced her understanding of intimacy and trust. The emotional patterns she had absorbed were deeply ingrained, affecting how she responded to vulnerability and affection. These reflections were both illuminating and painful, revealing the intricate ways in which family dynamics shape adult relationships. She recognized that to fully embrace love, she needed to confront these patterns and understand their impact. This awareness marked the beginning of a deeper journey into self-discovery and healing. The emotional complexity of her family background created a rich but challenging context for her romantic life. The similarities between her father and her partner were not accidental but a reflection of the deep psychological imprint of early relationships. She found herself navigating feelings of comfort and conflict, attraction and apprehension. This duality influenced her interactions, sometimes leading to misunderstandings and hurt. The tension between the past and present added layers of complexity to her emotional world, requiring careful reflection and courage to address. Her journey was one of seeking balance between honoring her past and forging a new path forward. As she built her life and relationship, she carried with her the lessons and wounds of her upbringing. The emotional echoes of her father's influence were woven into her experiences, shaping how she loved and was loved. This interplay of past and present created a dynamic that was both challenging and transformative. She learned that understanding and healing from these influences was essential to creating healthy, fulfilling relationships. The journey required patience, self-compassion, and a willingness to face difficult truths. Through this process, she began to envision a future where love was not defined by past pain but by growth and connection. Her connection with her father, though complicated, remained a fundamental part of her story. It was a relationship that held both promise and pain, shaping her identity and her capacity for intimacy. The emotional landscape of her family life provided both context and contrast for her romantic experiences. Recognizing the significance of this relationship was a key step in her journey toward understanding herself and her desires. It highlighted the profound impact of family on the patterns of love and connection that define our lives. This realization set the stage for the unfolding story of love, loss, and the search for healing that lay ahead. The moment she made the comparison was charged with a mix of vulnerability and impulsiveness. A fleeting thought that surfaced during an intimate moment and took on a weight she had not anticipated. In the quiet of their shared space, her mind involuntarily drew parallels between her partner and her father, an association born from years of complex emotions and subconscious patterns. This comparison, though perhaps understandable from a psychological perspective, was jarring in its raw honesty. It exposed unresolved feelings and insecurities that had been quietly shaping her experiences of love and connection. The words, once spoken, hung heavily in the air, transforming a moment of tenderness into a fracture in their relationship. Her partner's reaction was immediate and profound, revealing sensitivities she had not fully grasped before. The comparison touched on insecurities and boundaries that were deeply personal, striking at the core of his self-image and their bond. What she had intended as an unfiltered expression of thought became a source of pain and alienation. His response was a mixture of hurt and confusion, a sudden distancing that created a palpable tension between them. The intimacy that had once been a space of mutual trust was overshadowed by the shockwaves of her words. She watched helplessly as the connection they had built began to unravel, caught in the aftermath of a moment that spiraled beyond her control. For her, the immediate aftermath was a tumult of regret, fear, and a desperate wish to undo what had been said. She struggled to understand the magnitude of the impact, grappling with the realization that a single comment could carry such destructive power. The emotional weight of her partner's hurt was a stark contrast to her initial perception of the comparison as something minor or even cathartic. This gap between intention and consequence deepened her feelings of confusion and sorrow. She found herself caught in a web of self-blame, questioning her judgment and the appropriateness of her honesty in that vulnerable moment. The intimacy that had been a source of comfort now felt fragile and precarious. Her attempts to bridge the growing divide were fraught with difficulty. She reached out with apologies and explanations, seeking to convey the complexity of her feelings and the absence of malice in her words. Yet, the breach created by the comparison proved challenging to mend. Communication became strained, colored by unspoken resentments and guarded emotions. The ease of their earlier connection gave way to awkward silences and tentative exchanges. She sensed the widening gap between them, a distance that neither time nor words seemed able to close easily. The emotional fallout extended beyond the immediate moment, seeping into the fabric of their daily interactions. This experience forced her into deep introspection about the underlying reasons for the comparison and its resonance. She realized that her words were not merely a reflection of the present relationship but a manifestation of deeper emotional currents stemming from her past. The shadows cast by her relationship with her father had subtly influenced her perceptions and expectations of love and intimacy. These unresolved feelings had surfaced unexpectedly, revealing vulnerabilities she had not fully confronted. This moment became a catalyst for a painful but necessary reckoning with the ways in which past wounds continued to shape her present experiences. The complexity of her emotions was compounded by the dual sense of connection and distance embodied in the comparison. On one hand, it highlighted the patterns she recognized and struggled to break free from. On the other, it underscored the uniqueness of her current relationship and the pain caused by drawing parallels to a figure associated with both love and conflict. This ambivalence added layers of difficulty to her attempts to navigate the fallout. She was caught between the desire to be truthful and the need to protect the fragile bond with her partner. The tension between these impulses created a persistent inner conflict that complicated her emotional landscape. In the days following the comparison, the emotional atmosphere between them remained charged and unsettled. Both she and her partner grappled with the implications, seeking ways to process the hurt and confusion. The incident became a turning point, signaling a shift in the dynamics of their relationship. Trust and intimacy, once abundant, now required conscious effort and vulnerability to rebuild. She faced the challenge of not only repairing the immediate damage but also addressing the deeper issues that the comparison had brought to light. This period of emotional turbulence demanded patience, empathy, and a willingness to engage with difficult truths. Throughout this time, she also confronted the fear of losing not only her partner but the sense of security and belonging that the relationship represented. The comparison, while painful, illuminated the fragility of the bond and the stakes involved in their connection. It compelled her to examine her communication patterns, emotional needs, and the unresolved aspects of her personal history. This self-examination was uncomfortable but necessary, providing insight into the interplay between past experiences and present relationships. It marked the beginning of a journey toward greater self-awareness and emotional growth. The experience of the comparison and its aftermath served as a profound lesson in the power of words and the complexities of intimacy. It revealed the delicate balance between honesty and sensitivity, between vulnerability and respect. She learned that love involves navigating not only shared joys but also the challenging terrain of misunderstandings and emotional wounds. This realization, though painful, offered a pathway toward deeper connection and healing if approached with care and commitment. The chapter that unfolded was one of emotional awakening, a confrontation with the shadows of the past and a step toward a more conscious and compassionate future. The breakup that followed the comparison was a devastating blow, marking a sudden and painful end to what had once seemed a promising relationship. The words she had spoken, intended or not, had triggered a rupture too wide to mend. His decision to leave was firm and resolute, leaving her to confront a profound sense of loss and rejection. The emotional aftermath was raw and overwhelming. The space they once shared was now filled with silence and absence. She felt adrift, struggling to make sense of the sudden void and the whirlwind of emotions that accompanied it. The breakup was not merely the end of a romantic connection but the collapse of a shared vision of the future, leaving her to grapple with shattered dreams and lingering pain. In the wake of the breakup, the ripple effects extended beyond the immediate relationship. The news of the incident and its consequences reached her father, a man whose presence in her life was both significant and complicated. The revelation of the comparison and the subsequent breakup struck a chord with him, stirring emotions and memories that had long been subdued. His reaction was one of disappointment and withdrawal, a distancing that compounded her feelings of isolation. The fragile ties that bound them began to fray, and soon, her father chose silence over dialogue. This refusal to communicate deepened her sense of abandonment, turning personal heartbreak into a familial crisis. The man who had once been a source of support and guidance now seemed unreachable, adding another layer of loss to her already heavy heart. The emotional landscape she navigated became increasingly complex as she dealt with the dual rejection from both her partner and her father. The comparison, a catalyst for the breakup, had inadvertently severed important connections, leaving her feeling profoundly alone. She wrestled with the weight of her words and actions, questioning how a single moment could unravel relationships so deeply embedded in her life. The loneliness was acute, a pervasive presence that influenced her thoughts and feelings. Each day became a challenge to find meaning and solace amidst the pain. As she struggled to reconcile the loss of love with the fracture in her family, this convergence of personal and familial rupture was a crucible that tested her resilience and capacity for healing. Her interactions with others also changed during this time. Friends and acquaintances, while often well-meaning, could not fully grasp the depth of her turmoil. The stigma of the situation and the complexity of the relationships involved made it difficult to share her experience openly. She found herself retreating inward, guarding her vulnerability and shielding her pain from the world. This withdrawal, while protective, further isolated her from the social support networks that might have offered comfort and perspective. The fracture in her family added a layer of complexity to her social interactions, creating barriers to connection and understanding. She faced the challenge of rebuilding trust and intimacy not only within romantic relationships but within her broader social sphere. Throughout this period, she grappled with intense feelings of self-doubt and confusion. The comparison that had sparked such turmoil led her to question her own perceptions and judgments. She wondered whether her internal struggles with her father's influence had clouded her ability to engage authentically in her relationship. This introspection was fraught with difficulty, as it required confronting uncomfortable truths about herself and the patterns that shaped her interactions. The process of self-examination was painful but necessary, offering a path toward understanding the underlying dynamics that had contributed to the breakup and familial estrangement. This journey into self-awareness marked a critical turning point in her emotional evolution. Despite the pain and uncertainty, she sought ways to cope with the overwhelming emotions. She experimented with different forms of expression and healing, from journaling to therapy, seeking outlets that could help her process the complex feelings of loss and betrayal. These efforts were part of a broader attempt to regain control and agency in a situation that had felt overwhelmingly chaotic. The journey was marked by setbacks and moments of despair, but also by small victories and glimmers of hope. Each step forward, no matter how tentative, reinforced her commitment to healing and growth. This resilience became a foundation upon which she could begin to rebuild her life and relationships. The rupture with her father, in particular, presented profound challenges. The loss of communication with a parent is a unique and deeply painful form of estrangement, one that cuts to the core of identity and belonging. She mourned not only the absence of his presence but the loss of the possibility for reconciliation and understanding. This grief was complex and enduring, intertwining with her other losses in a tapestry of sorrow. Yet, it also motivated her to seek deeper insight into the nature of family bonds and the limits of forgiveness. The experience became a catalyst for exploring the boundaries of love and acceptance, and the ways in which relationships can be both sustaining and fragile. As she moved through this turbulent phase, she began to recognize the importance of self-compassion and patience. The pain of rejection and estrangement was not a reflection of her worth but a part of the human experience of imperfection and complexity. This realization offered a measure of comfort and a basis for hope. She understood that healing would take time and require a willingness to embrace vulnerability and uncertainty. The breakup and familial distancing were not the end of her story but chapters within a larger narrative of growth and transformation. With this perspective, she prepared to embark on the difficult but necessary journey toward restoration and renewal. Her days were consumed by a swirl of emotions: pain, confusion, regret, and a deep yearning for answers that seemed just out of reach. The rupture between her and the two most important men in her life left her grappling with a profound sense of loss and bewilderment. She found herself caught in an internal storm, struggling to make sense of how a momentary comparison had set off such a cascade of consequences. The emotional weight was suffocating, pressing down on her with relentless intensity. Her mind replayed the events over and over, searching for understanding, for some thread of logic that could explain the unraveling of relationships that had once been pillars of her life. In the quiet solitude of reflection, she began to confront the complexity of her feelings. The initial shock of rejection gave way to a painful self-examination. She questioned not only the comparison she had made but the deeper fears and insecurities that had led her to voice it. The comparison was more than just words spoken in a vulnerable moment. It was a window into unresolved wounds from her childhood and her relationship with her father. These emotional undercurrents had subtly influenced her perceptions and behaviors, shaping the way she related to intimacy and trust. Facing these truths was daunting, requiring her to acknowledge parts of herself she had long avoided. Her struggle was compounded by feelings of guilt and responsibility. She wrestled with the notion that her words had caused irreparable harm, that her impulsive honesty had driven away those she loved most. This self-blame weighed heavily, amplifying her sense of isolation and despair. Yet, amid this turmoil, she also recognized the importance of compassion toward herself and others. She began to understand that human relationships are fraught with complexity and that mistakes, even painful ones, are part of the journey toward growth. This shift in perspective was subtle but significant, offering a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. The confusion she felt extended beyond the personal to the relational dynamics at play. She pondered the reactions of her partner and her father, trying to understand their perspectives and the emotional boundaries they had established. The silence and distance from her father were particularly difficult to bear, as they symbolized not only rejection but a rupture in her foundational support system. She yearned for dialogue and reconciliation, but the barriers seemed insurmountable. This sense of disconnection deepened her loneliness, underscoring the fragility of family bonds and the pain of estrangement. In this period of emotional processing, she also confronted the impact of these events on her self-esteem and identity. The rejection challenged her sense of worth and belonging, stirring doubts about her capacity to be loved and accepted. She grappled with feelings of inadequacy, wondering if her vulnerabilities and flaws made her unworthy of connection. This internal conflict was a crucible for transformation, forcing her to reevaluate her beliefs about love and acceptance. Through this struggle, she began to cultivate a more compassionate and realistic view of herself, recognizing that imperfections are part of being human and do not diminish her inherent value. The emotional landscape was further complicated by the social ramifications of the breakup and familial estrangement. She found herself navigating a changed social environment, where friendships and support networks were tested. The stigma and misunderstanding surrounding her situation made it difficult to share her experience openly, leading to further withdrawal. This social isolation reinforced the emotional challenges she faced, creating a cycle of loneliness that was hard to break. Yet, it also prompted her to seek out new forms of connection and support, fostering resilience and adaptability. Throughout this period, she engaged in various forms of coping and healing. She turned to creative expression, journaling, and therapy as outlets for processing her emotions. These practices provided a means to articulate her pain and begin the work of healing. She also explored mindfulness and self-care rituals that nurtured her well-being, offering moments of peace amid the chaos. This intentional focus on healing was a crucial step in rebuilding her emotional foundation and preparing for the possibility of renewal. Her journey through confusion and pain was marked by both setbacks and progress. She experienced waves of despair and moments of clarity, oscillating between hope and hopelessness. This ebb and flow were part of the natural process of emotional recovery. Requiring patience and perseverance, she learned to honor her feelings without being overwhelmed by them, developing a greater capacity for emotional regulation. This growth laid the groundwork for deeper healing and eventual reconciliation with herself and others. As she moved through this challenging chapter, she began to envision a path forward. The clarity gained from reflection and self-awareness illuminated possibilities for rebuilding her life and relationships. She recognized that while the past could not be changed, her response to it was within her control. This realization empowered her to take steps toward healing, forgiveness, and growth. The process was ongoing, a journey rather than a destination, but it held the promise of transformation and renewed hope. In embracing the complexity of her emotions and experiences, she found a measure of peace. The confusion that once dominated her mind gave way to understanding and acceptance. She acknowledged the pain of loss while also opening herself to the possibility of healing. This chapter was a pivotal moment in her story, a time of reckoning and renewal, setting the stage for the emergence of strength, resilience, and a deeper connection with herself and others. Her journey toward seeking closure and self-reflection was a profound and often painful process, marked by moments of insight and emotional upheaval. She understood that to heal and move forward, she needed to confront the realities of her past actions and their consequences with honesty and humility. This meant not only grappling with the hurt she had caused others but also acknowledging the ways in which her own fears and unresolved issues had shaped her behavior. The comparison she made in an intimate moment was a symptom of deeper wounds rooted in her relationship with her father, insecurities she had carried for years. Recognizing this was essential for her growth, even though it brought with it feelings of guilt and regret. She began to explore the emotional landscape that had led to the breakup and familial estrangement, seeking to understand the complex interplay between her past experiences and present actions. This introspection was challenging, requiring her to peel back layers of defense mechanisms and confront vulnerabilities she had long avoided. She questioned patterns of communication and emotional expression, acknowledging how these had contributed to misunderstandings and pain. This self-examination was not about self-condemnation but about cultivating awareness and responsibility. It was a crucial step toward breaking cycles of hurt and building healthier relational dynamics in the future. The process of seeking forgiveness was central to her path toward closure. She recognized that forgiveness was a multifaceted journey involving herself, her former partner, and her father. Forgiving others for their reactions and choices was intertwined with the need to forgive herself for the pain her words had caused. This triad of forgiveness was complex and required patience and compassion. She came to see forgiveness not as a simple act but as an ongoing practice that released her from the burdens of resentment and self-reproach. It opened space for healing and allowed her to envision relationships rooted in understanding rather than blame. Throughout this period, she actively sought ways to communicate her remorse and desire for reconciliation. Whether through letters, conversations, or mediated dialogue, she endeavored to express her feelings authentically and listen deeply to the perspectives of those she had hurt. These efforts were met with varying degrees of openness and resistance, reflecting the complexities of human emotions and the scars left by conflict. She learned to respect boundaries and accept that some wounds require time and space to heal. This respect for the healing process was a lesson in humility and patience, underscoring the importance of allowing others to process their feelings on their own terms. Simultaneously, she focused on healing her relationship with herself. The journey inward involved nurturing self-compassion and rebuilding her self-esteem, which had been deeply shaken by the events. She cultivated practices that fostered emotional resilience, such as mindfulness, therapy, and creative expression. These tools helped her navigate the turbulent waters of regret and sorrow, providing anchors of stability and hope. She learned to treat herself with kindness, recognizing that growth often comes through struggle and that imperfection is a natural part of the human experience. Her reflections also led to a reevaluation of her values and desires in relationships. She gained clarity about the qualities she sought in partners and the boundaries necessary to maintain her well-being. This newfound understanding empowered her to approach future relationships with greater awareness and intentionality. She embraced the idea that love requires both vulnerability and strength, honesty and respect. This balanced perspective was a foundation for healthier connections and a testament to her evolving emotional maturity. As she continued to seek closure, she encountered moments of profound insight and transformation. She realized that closure is not always about resolving every conflict or receiving full forgiveness from others, but about finding peace within herself. This internal resolution allowed her to release the grip of the past and step into a future unburdened by lingering regrets. She embraced the ambiguity and imperfection of life, understanding that healing is a process rather than a destination. The journey towards self-reflection and closure was also marked by a deepening sense of empathy and compassion. She became more attuned to the complexities of human relationships and the ways in which pain and misunderstanding can shape behavior. This empathy extended to herself and others, fostering a sense of connection and shared humanity. It enriched her capacity for forgiveness and opened her heart to the possibility of reconciliation and renewal. Throughout this chapter, she demonstrated remarkable courage and resilience. Facing the consequences of her actions and the pain they caused required strength and vulnerability. Her commitment to growth and healing was a powerful testament to her character and determination. This phase of her journey laid the groundwork for the renewal that would follow, preparing her to embrace new beginnings with an open heart and a wiser spirit. Ultimately, the process of seeking closure and engaging in self-reflection was a transformative passage. It marked a turning point where pain was met with understanding, and regret was transformed into learning. She emerged from this phase with a clearer sense of self, a deeper capacity for love, and the hope that, while the past could not be changed, the future was hers to shape. This chapter was a bridge between loss and renewal, a vital step on the path toward healing and wholeness. The journey toward moving on and rebuilding her life after the heartbreak was a gradual, sometimes painful process that demanded resilience, courage, and a willingness to embrace change. The raw wounds of loss slowly began to heal as she consciously chose to redefine her sense of self, beyond the confines of her past relationships and the mistakes she had made. This phase was not about erasing the past or pretending the pain never existed, but about integrating those experiences into a new narrative, one that honored her growth and her capacity to love and be loved in healthier, more authentic ways. The transformation unfolded as she committed to reclaiming her power and crafting a life rooted in self-respect and hope. She began by cultivating a renewed relationship with herself, a foundation upon which all future connections would rest. This meant embracing self-compassion and forgiving herself for the moments of weakness and impulsivity that had contributed to her pain. She recognized that self-forgiveness was essential not only for healing but also for opening her heart to new possibilities. Through reflective practices such as journaling, meditation, and therapy, she nurtured her emotional well-being and gained deeper insight into her patterns and triggers. This inner work allowed her to build resilience and to approach life with a more balanced and hopeful perspective. As she healed, she gradually expanded her social world, reconnecting with friends and building new relationships that were based on mutual respect and understanding. She sought out communities and connections that supported her growth and affirmed her worth. These relationships became sources of joy, encouragement, and stability, reminding her that love and belonging could be found in many forms. The sense of isolation that had once engulfed her began to dissipate, replaced by a growing network of support that strengthened her resolve to move forward. Each positive connection reinforced her belief in the possibility of happiness and authentic intimacy. Her romantic life also took on new meaning as she approached it with greater awareness and intention. The lessons from her past experiences informed her choices and boundaries, helping her to recognize what she truly needed in a partner and a relationship. She embraced vulnerability as a strength rather than a weakness, allowing herself to connect more deeply while maintaining healthy limits. This balance was crucial in fostering relationships that were nurturing and respectful, breaking the cycles of pain and misunderstanding she had endured before. With time, she rediscovered the joy of companionship and the excitement of new beginnings. Professionally and personally, she pursued passions and goals that rekindled her sense of purpose and fulfillment. Engaging in activities that brought her satisfaction and growth reinforced her identity beyond the realm of relationships. This holistic approach to rebuilding her life helped to anchor her during moments of doubt and uncertainty. She celebrated her achievements, both big and small, as milestones of her transformation. The empowerment she gained through these pursuits fueled her confidence and optimism, reminding her of her inherent strength and resilience. Throughout this process, she embraced the importance of patience and self-care. Healing was not linear, and she acknowledged that setbacks and difficult emotions were natural parts of the journey. She learned to be gentle with herself, offering kindness and understanding during times of struggle. This compassionate approach allowed her to navigate the complexities of recovery with grace, maintaining hope even when the path forward seemed unclear. She recognized that true healing involves honoring the full spectrum of human experience. The joys, the sorrows, the successes, and the failures. Her evolving understanding of love and relationships deepened as she integrated the wisdom gained from her journey. She realized that healthy connections require openness, respect, and the courage to confront vulnerabilities. This insight guided her in fostering relationships that nourished her soul and encouraged mutual growth. She became more selective and intentional, prioritizing quality and authenticity over quantity. This discernment was a testament to her growth and a safeguard against repeating past patterns. As she moved further into this new chapter, she cultivated a sense of hope and possibility that permeated her outlook on life. The pain of the past remained a part of her story, but it no longer defined her trajectory. Instead, it served as a foundation for resilience and a reminder of her capacity to overcome adversity. She embraced the future with an open heart and a spirit ready to engage fully with the opportunities that awaited. The journey of rebuilding was ongoing, but each day brought new chances for joy, connection, and fulfillment. Ultimately, her story became one of transformation, a powerful testament to the strength of the human spirit and the potential for renewal after loss. She learned that moving on is not about forgetting but about embracing life's complexities with courage and grace. This chapter was a celebration of growth, self-discovery, and the enduring capacity for love in all its forms. As she stepped forward, she did so with the knowledge that she was whole, capable, and worthy of the happiness she sought. The future was hers to shape, rich with promise and possibility.
Thanks for watching. It means a lot. Share the video, and I'll see you soon.